everyone, welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today I am going to be doing a author spotlight. I have with us today, he has a new book out right now. It's called We Come Bearing Curses. My man, Zach Chamberlain. Zach, welcome to the Horror Room.
Thank you for having me, Travis. I really greatly appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, my friend. It's a pleasure. So tell us a little bit about We Come Bearing Curses.
Well, We Come Bearing Curses is a story about two brothers who grew up in this secluded community in the Midwest. And one thing that's different about this story is it's a Lovecraftian horror set in the Midwest. And that's kind of unusual for Lovecraftian horror or cosmic horror. Typically, you find them set in places near the ocean or, in kind of different landscapes like that. So this story is about these two brothers who grew up in this secluded village, which was cut off from the world, and it was kind of beset by creatures that would kind of come in the dark and attack the people who live there. One of the brothers was luckily he escaped at early childhood, but after a horrific nightmare, which was a prophecy of what was to come, he had to come back home and reestablish his connection to his older brother so they could save our world from a psychotic cult trying to bring in the old gods, Cthulhu, and other beings such as that, and destroy our realm. And really what the story is about isn't just these the two brothers. It's about recognizing trauma. I do a lot of trauma work on my own. I volunteer as a peer support group leader, and the main point of the story, aside from to horrify and entertain, is also to tell the story of two brothers who went through a great deal of trauma in their childhood, and how in this story they are finally recognizing that they need to overcome that and come together and grow with each other, and kind of get past this pain that separated them in the first place. And of course, there's plenty of cosmic monsters. And as somebody pointed out, I'm a huge fan of Celtic folklore, but I'm also a huge fan of Lovecraft cosmic monsters. So I actually combine the two, Lovecraftian horror with Celtic folklore. So the villains, the nemesis in the story, are called the Fomori, which are actually So if you're familiar with Celtic folklore, these were kind of like the adversaries of humanity, according to Irish folklore. And so and to me, I feel that when H.P. Lovecraft was creating his ideas for cosmic monsters and horrible, evil things that pretty much just want to feed on us, I feel anyway, that they were kind of inspired by the Femoria from Irish folklore.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so this story is about cosmic horrors. Yes, there's magic. There's there's a bit of a fantasy element to it, and again, it's all set here in the Kansas City area. So I even bring up specific areas of Kansas City that those of us around here know about, like Strawberry Hill. We talk about the aqueducts, and that have been abandoned inside the city. So these are kind of little things that I think that little Easter eggs that those who grow up here know about.
That's amazing. Now, when it comes to the characters, did you put a little bit of yourself into the two characters?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm a survivor. First of all, I have my own traumas, my own experiences. But on top of that, I'm also a 15-year veteran of EMS and fire. So I used to be a firefighter, and then I went on to become a paramedic. And after 15 years of that, plus coupled with my own childhood trauma and horror story, I got to really kind of push or pour some of my own pain and healing, most importantly, healing into the story as well. And for the rest of the series, because this is going to be the first of a series, that's really kind of like the through line. The thing that's going to carry these characters through is that they're learning to cope and heal from their horrible experiences and all their pain.
And that's a powerful thing too, that you use writing as a way to heal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this story was definitely a cathartic experience in a lot of ways. I had to put myself in a very vulnerable position and kind of tell a bit of my own story, at the same time, while sharing this kind of background of like, it's like, here's my own pain, but I just kind of threw it in the middle of a very horrifying, cosmic horror monster situation, and even there are some parts of the book that are actually based off of things that I experienced growing up. And in fact, there's a dream sequence that was my actual night terror for a good 10 years. And I felt like, man, that's that terror. And I won't lie. I said to my therapist, I was like, I was talking to my therapist. I'm like, what I think is the problem with Hollywood is they put out a lot of like scary movies, but I've never experienced a 10 out of 10 scary movie, like something that just, really gets me, And the problem with it is because I'm comparing my 10 out of 10 was this night terror that I had dreams about, that it had all these elements of Lovecraftian horror elements in it, to what, somebody in Hollywood's trying to put together. You know what? I think that's my 10 out of 10 horror right there. And then I have to share it with you.
And we're lucky. Yes, we're lucky. Yeah. Now, but I mean, to relive some of these traumas and some of these night terrors, and yes, it's part of healing and writing them down. But was it tough to relive these experiences?
So I'm in post-traumatic recovery. I've been there for about 5 years. And for me, yes, and I was kind of like, when I was writing this story, I was also kind of going through a hard time. I was, kind of working through some stuff, because recovery isn't, a one and done. You're like, oh, I'm healed, I'm good. Yeah. It's a constant process. So for me, as I'm writing the story, I was experiencing, there was some things I was going through, professionally and personally, and it allowed me to kind of like take that pain and keep it separate from myself, so that way I could actually like think about it logically. So it was a great form of therapy for me. Actually, it was great, to write this story. One, I got to be creative and express a lot of the stuff that I've been, kind of wrestling with all my life. But at the same time, I got to put it in a safe place.
Yes, that's amazing.
Yeah, and so I got to look at it like somebody is like watching a movie. It's like part of you knows, okay, this isn't real. Yeah. But I got to work through all this stuff that I've been dealing with.
And that's what's great about it.
It was, again, healing is painful.
It is.
It is. The healing experience isn't always a great experience, but the reward is where it's at. And I got to come out of this after the writing of the book, and after kind of working through it, I came out actually in a much better place than I was when I started it.
And part of the healing process is putting those experiences in the forefront, not behind you. Like, you have to tackle them, you have to deal with them. And I think so many people think, hey, it's I can heal by ignoring them and putting them behind me, but they always creep back up. But you attack them face to face. That's the best way of doing it.
Well, and that's exactly what one of the characters in the story, his name's George Thatch. He's the older brother. He unfortunately had taken a big brunt of their parents' abuse, the father's abuse. Him and his brother were both neglected and emotionally abused as children, and he got the brunt of that because he's the older one, and he remembers most of it. And he learns in the story that the best way for him to heal and recover and become stronger is by facing these fears and these pains head on. And even the younger brother, he has his own, he's already in the midst of recovery. So there's a little bit of that, like, this is where I could be, and he has to learn from he's learning from his younger brother who's in a different place, healing wise. And it's interesting to me when I think about it, that if I was to have a conversation with me like 6 years ago, how that person might think of me as being like somewhat like put together, which is totally far from the truth. I'm a huge train wreck. But it's like, we see people in different levels of healing and different places in their life, and it's easy to become like jealous or envious of that person, but you don't know their full story. You don't know how long it took them to get there. Just like, it's like the saying goes, don't judge your chapter, your chapter 1 by somebody else's chapter 20.
Exactly. But I mean, I think that's a common human nature thing. I mean, even just in life in general, you go on Facebook and you see someone who was at the same age and place as you, and they're up here, and you're like, well, and I'm here. Why the hell am I not here? And like, we all move at different things. I mean, at paces.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought up the common humanity, because really, when we think about like, what are some of the things that human beings all have in common, right? And we talk about all human beings suffer, and all human beings want to be free of suffering. But one thing about this book is that all human beings are also afraid of, we all fear. And one of the things that Lovecraft did and did really well is that he tapped into this human fear of being completely powerless and insignificant in the face of something monstrous. And he tapped into that very well, where we were way out of our depth, out of our scope. And, and everybody, and I remember reading something on Reddit today where somebody was talking about, I was like, how is it that something can be so monstrous to drive a person mad? And because that's what Lovecraft did. He talked about creatures that were so monstrous and so huge and evil and intelligent that just gazing upon them would drive you insane. And I think what Lovecraft was trying to say was that, when you come to face with something that makes you feel so small and so insignificant, and also hates you, it wants to eat you, destroy you, cause you pain, that fear is like, because we're no longer the alpha, right?
Exactly.
And when you tap into that fear, which every human being on this planet has, that's universal. And I think that's why Lovecraft's work in that side of things has been so successful. Now, unlike Lovecraft's work, my ideas, and there's a growing community of people who want to bring back cosmic horror. And there's a huge resurgence of this since like the early 2000s, even I would say even late 90s. And one of the things that's going on now is they're trying to take Lovecraft and make his work more equitable and inclusive. Because we all know for a fact that Lovecraft was not exactly, equitable or inclusive. I mean, he was renowned for being kind of a racist douche. I mean, no offense to the man, and God rest his soul and all that stuff. But, his work was not exactly for everyone. And I think that you'll see a lot of the new work that's coming out that is based off kind of his ideas and his the cosmic horror elements. Is it's trying to create it where like it is that, you know, exactly that, equitable and inclusive. And so my series is actually going to focus a lot on that as well. That, you know, we are all human beings. We all have these same fears, you know, and so I want to kind of bring that into his into my writing as well. So I've been doing a lot of studying about like Hinduism, for instance. One of the main characters,
Really?
yeah, Mata is one of the main characters. She's Hindi, and she's deaf. So not only did I have to study some things about the Hindu culture, but I also had to learn what it was like. I had to think about what it was like, and also study, you know, like what it's like to talk to somebody who only speaks in sign language. You know,
Yeah.
and what, you know, and also consider, it's like, what if you're deaf and mute, and you're put in a horror situation where
How
there
do
are
you?
monsters everywhere?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what do we? I mean, if you know, because we rely on our senses to protect us at that point. So I created this very powerful woman, this very powerful female character, and as I love powerful women in horror.
Hmm. I
I'm
do too.
I'm over the whole damsel in distress. I'm over
Yes,
the
that was in the 80s. Yeah.
yeah, I'm over the
Before,
bimbo tripping over the twigs and, you know, slipping on her, you know, nightgown or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, I want strong female characters and representation in that sense. And so I created this like very powerful, lovely, wonderful character named Mata, who's Hindi, but she's deaf and mute. But that doesn't slow her down. That doesn't even like phase her when confronted with a challenge. You know, she's an MMA fighter. You know, and if you look at some of these, like MMA fighters these days, these
Mhm.
women, they
Yes.
are terrifying.
They are. Amanda Nunes is terrifying.
Yeah, and there's a surgence of women from India and who are Hindi background or and from the Middle East who are now also joining the MMA. And you know, these are women who are in their culture. They don't have the same, you know, equality
And
you know,
freedoms. Yes.
and freedoms, right? So I want them to be represented as well. You know, so yeah, I have a huge, so I'm trying to make my stories as rich as possible and include as many people, you know, and in as many cultures and as many different ideas as I can, without it, of course, being a big giant mess. So
Yeah.
yeah. So it's been a trip, man. It's so many levels to this thing, and you know, and it's been very well received. You know, when I did my first book signing, I had somebody from the trans community approach me and was just excited because I was bringing in, I talked to him about my next book, and I was talking about how one of my characters from my next book, the sequel to this one, is trans, and like, man, he was stoked. He was like, "Oh, thank goodness!" He was like, "That's so cool because we don't have enough representation." You know,
I agree.
in horror and literature and stuff like that. That's, favorable.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm over the moon, excited about how well this has been received so far.
That's amazing. By the way, you just gave me an idea of of a video that I'm going to do, because I'm doing a ranking for horror, and
Yeah.
and I just saw myself the top 5, and I'm like, top 5 LGBTQ
Right.
characters in horror movies.
It's tough.
That's a good top 5.
Yeah, it's a tough top 5. You'd have to dig
Yeah.
for that.
So I'm definitely do that.
Yeah, for sure. And I got, heck, that's actually kind of interesting to like think
Yeah.
about who would I put in there. I would definitely put the work from American Horror Story that
Mhm.
they're doing.
A good one.
Story. Yeah, definitely put that stuff in there. But that's just me.
So when you were writing, going back to your book, so when you were writing your first book, the first
Mhm.
book, did you in the beginning? Did you have in mind that this was going to be a series, or there's some point you were like, "Oh, this was such a great story. There's no way I'm gonna be able to wrap this up in one book."
So, when I first started writing the book, I admit I had a lot. I still, to this moment, still suffer from imposter syndrome, where I'm just like, I'm just going to write this, and honestly, I just needed to get something off my chest. When I tell people I wrote a story, and they're like, "Well, where'd you come up?" And it's like, this story's been sitting inside of me, clawing its way out, trying to find, some voice, and it finally just happened. I just got this wild hair. I wrote the first draft. I wrote that, and I'm saying it's like nearly 600 pages of the first draft, and I wrote it in 4 months. I mean, it just it was very organic. My process, it's kind of like trying to remember the style of writing that psychologists use to kind of like allow you to tap into your subconscious, right?
Yeah.
God, I'm having a stroke. I can't remember it now. Anyway, I just kept writing, and all these characters all these characters were alive in me already. I just, they needed some place to go. And so, it was, it just all kind of came out and together. And I had no idea at the time that I was going to even do a series. I was like, let's just see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And after I got done writing the story, and then I started sharing it, and at the end of the story, I'm like, this has room to grow, but and again, imposter syndrome. There's that thing, that little tiny voice, like, yeah, but I mean, are you really good enough? And finally, I got over that. I was like, you know what? Who cares? Who cares if you think? And it's like, and I told a friend, it's like, sometimes you just have to make that jump. I just took a jump to write a book just for fun, because I have a story. I want people to hear it too, and I hope it impacts them. I hope it's terrifying, gives them nightmares, but whatever. But I also want them to feel entertained, and also find some part of them that like connects with these characters. And then I'm thinking, I want to see these characters grow. I want them to heal, and because they're not done healing, they're still suffering, and they need to, and after a horrible experience like what they're going through in this book, you like, okay, but what would happen to somebody after that? You don't see that a lot in these no. Except for like Scream, with the exception of like Scream and maybe some of the Nightmare on Elm Streets, and a couple of the sequels. You're like, where's the character 4 or 5 years later? And I will say, and I know this is going to be controversial, I do like Rob Zombie's first remake of Halloween. I know it's controversial, but here's the thing: I don't like it better than the original. That's never going to happen. As its own movie, I liked what he did. I liked his style. I liked what he was trying to make with it. It was very gritty, and I like that. What I liked, and the only thing I liked about the second movie that he did, even though it was, I wasn't a huge fan of the second one, but I did like the fact that he showed these characters who survived something awful like years later.
Mm-hmm.
They were just a mess, right?
I actually like the second one better than the first one.
Yeah, it just didn't. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know what it was about me. It didn't grab me. But then again, I'm more of the, like I said, I love my Lovecraft. I love, John Carpenter's work. The stuff he did with The Thing. Obviously inspired me. But I'm also like Freddy Krueger. I'm like, the stuff that just like gets into your like psyche and just hooks you. Yeah. So anyway. So yeah, I never expected this to be a sequel. I didn't expect to create. I'm 100 pages into the next book already.
Okay, so the question is, with the next book, so there's going to be more in the series. So how do you determine a cutoff point? How do you get to that? Are you writing this with in mind? Okay, this is going to be the ending, and this is going to be. Are you looking forward to the next book ahead of time? this is going to be the cutoff point, and this is how the next book is going to pick up?
So I discussed my method with another writer, and she's doing a romance fantasy sort of situation, and she's very organized and very and like plans everything. She's like, okay, I'm gonna do all 3 books, and I don't know if there's a right way or a wrong way.
Yeah.
I mean, like, so I'm totally new at this, and loving the adventure and loving all the learning experiences I'm picking along the way, but at the same time, I'm doing everything very organically. These characters have a life of their own. And, at some point, and I know that like actors, and I'm a theater film major when I went to college before I became a firefighter and a paramedic. I was like, I'm gonna try acting. And it worked out fabulously, right? So with that being said, I think of things very like cinematically. I think of like if this were a TV series, and that'd be like the greatest gift in the world, right? To turn something like this into a series, like a show or something. But that's how I process these images in my head, like they're part of a movie. So that being said, I kind of like let things go organically. When I'm writing these characters, at some point, I'm like, okay, I think this character's finally got to a point where, I think the story is finally getting to a point where it's good, that we can stop it and, stop the journey or leave it open-ended or whatever. Who knows where it's going to go? And, and I think that, I think it's kind of up in the air. I'm going to see where it goes. I want, like I said, stream of consciousness, sort of writing. It's like it's going to do its own thing. It's going to become its own. It's going to have its own life, and just like any life, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, right?
100%.
And so it's gonna come to an end sooner or later. And then in the meantime, I'm just gonna I have other stories that are now being born out of this whole process.
That's amazing. Now, is there a director or a filmmaker, hypothetically, if somebody came up to you and said there was a director, you can pick a director or filmmaker to translate these into cinema, who'd you pick?
Kirkland. The guy who directed and wrote and sorry, I'm usually better with names, especially directors. But the Walking Dead series. I mean, fantastic series. I read the graphic novels before the show came out. It's amazing. So I'm very much like that style. That's of writing. The folks who are doing the work on The Last of Us.
Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing.
I'd love to see somebody. And then like one of the characters, so I'm playing around with because I'm even though I enjoy writing, I used to draw when I was a kid, but I'm terrible at drawing. So I'm using a little bit of AI imagery to create these like templates for these characters. And one of them looks just like oh gosh. I was thinking like, oh, George Thatch, he would look really cool as a Jeremy Renner kind of guy. He's a little older, but and he can be haunted, so I have these ideas about like, where it could go. It's funny is that like I'm already putting together a musical score in my head. Like I love this, like how composers are now taking like music and they turn it into like epic remixes, So like there's a lot of these like classic lovely songs, Moonlight Sonata, but then somebody just like, but let's make this like if it was for an action film or a horror film, let's ramp it up. And so like for me in my brain, I'm like, oh yeah, that'd be really cool. And like, if there was a movie version of this in my head,
And I actually talked to another author, and that's to say that's the way he thinks. Like when he writes, he's thinking the movie or TV show version of this. And I guess if I wrote, which I wish I had the talent to, that's the way I would be thinking. How would this look on the screen? How
Right.
does the and as but as a reader, I love a author that is descriptive and has character development where I'm envisioning how this character looks. And it's great to be a reader and you feel like you're reading a book, but it feels like you're watching a movie at the same time.
Yeah. And I will say that's some of the biggest feedback I've gotten so far. Most positive feedback is like they're like, you know, I was like, yeah, I have this way of like thinking where I think of everything and cinematically, and they're like, totally get it now. Yeah, your character, the way you describe everything in your stories, and the graphic detail, and that you write these characters and their events and the horrible things that happen in these stories. They're like, I definitely see there's a cinematic quality, and that's just how I think of myself. Is that like if I was behind a camera and I'm filming this, how would I want it to look? And so yeah, I do think that way. I dream cinematically.
Yeah.
you know um so it's and when I tell a story or when I even listen to audiobooks or if I'm reading a story, I'm always picturing myself in my head, if this was a movie, this is how it would look.
That's how it looks. And it's how the characters look. And this is who would
Yeah.
be the actor or actress that would be the character.
Yeah, I mean, I even think like, yeah, actors or actresses. I think of like filming locations. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, where would this be filmed at? Um, and that's the thing. I would say that if I was to ever see this done on film, it would have to be set in the Midwest.
Then would you want it? You think it would be better as a film series or as a like a TV series?
Oh God, it would be so cool if it like wound up on like HBO or something, like an HBO series or something like that. But one thing at a time.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I'll pump my brakes. Let's get back to reality. Think about one thing at a time. Let's just get this
positive. Gotta think positive. Gotta put it
Yeah,
out.
yeah, I'm always thinking of the future, but right now I'm like, okay, let's get 250 units sold and then 1,000 by the end of the year, like that. I've never had to think about stuff like this where, the challenges of publishing a book and then getting it to readers. I was like I said, I just came in for fun, but now I'm like, okay, now this is coming to business.
Yeah, it is a business. You got to do the marketing, you got to do the sales, all that fun stuff.
Your brand, and then like I recently had a wonderful experience with half-price bookstores. They're half-price books, right?
Mhm.
And I came up to my local store and I said, "Hey, could I do a book signing here?" And they hadn't had a book signing since COVID.
Wow.
And so they were like so excited. They're like, "Yes, please." We haven't had one forever, and we kind of missed that. That local authors bringing in their stories,
Mhm.
right? And so I was super excited to be their first since COVID. And I said, "Well, hey, by the way, what do I have to do to get my book into your bookstore?" And so they gave me the contacts and everything like that, and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is a monster in itself to get your book distributed into bookstores." I was like,
Imagine.
wow. I mean, I'm so proud of any independent author, some indie author, who gets their books carried in a bookstore and sold. I mean, I was like, good for you, man, because that's a monster. That's a beast in itself for me.
Mm-hmm.
To put together a sales pitch and do all this. I have to set up a meeting with this, so and so, so I can get my books carried in half-price bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
Even places like Barnes and Noble, which my book is self-published through them as well as Amazon. And I said, hey, I want to do a book signing, at my local Barnes and Noble, and they're like, that's cool, but you got to get your book where it can be like refunded back to the bookstore in case something happened, like if somebody got a copy of the book and it was like torn or defective in some way. And I was like, oh, okay, so I just got to do that. At first I thought, oh, that's no problem, no big deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, I just got to do the whole sales pitch process and all that stuff. Like, oh my God, okay, all right.
But like a lot of people, I mean, when it comes to indie, I have a sales and marketing background. But a lot of, when it comes to self-publishing, and even like I interview a lot of indie filmmakers who don't have that big machine behind them, you know.
Right.
You got to put the boots on the ground. You got to get uncomfortable. You got to get in people's faces. You got to get rejections and all that scary stuff that comes along with sales.
Yeah, and I've been fortunate, knock on wood, that my book has been so well received. I mean, I'm kind of like, humbled in the sense I was like, I was not expecting this. So I'm excited about that. And I think I was like, okay, I had one bookstore who was like, yeah, we're just not ready for this right now. And I'm like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was, I was a theater major. Mm-hmm. I'm used to rejection.
Yes.
I had to audition and audition and audition. And then there's like been parts where I was like, man, this would be my dream part, only to have it, given to some other guy or something like that, Mm-hmm. I mean, rejection, I'm okay with that. I mean, again, I wanted to just get my story out to so many people as best I can. And, and if this is, and it's, like I said, it's just been a fun experience. Just writing it and creating these like characters, that, I'm I want it to be, read by everybody on the planet, sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just having a good time right now. And I try to make that my focus.
It must be an amazing feeling. Like I guess I'm a YouTube creator, but I mean, to create a project and to, like you said, have people read it and comment and love it. Like to be able to make something and it's out there, it's out in the environment. That is something that you made. That and I definitely think with the option of self-publishing, and especially Amazon, has made it so much easier for indie authors to get their work out there. Because beforehand, like you would have to find someone to, a publisher to okay it and then take majority of your money and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I was talking about that with somebody today. It's like, before the internet and before Amazon sales and all this other stuff, writers were having to print off their manuscript, put it in a box, and then just drive to local publishers and mail these things off and just kind of like open pray, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, you kind of get to skip all that as an indie author on Amazon and things like that, and be like, you know what, I'm just going to try this out. And and sure, there's, just like anything, there's going to be good authors and bad authors, and good work and bad work. I hope all mine's good, but I know that's, I may not put out.
Maybe everybody's cup of tea.
Right. It may not be everybody's cup of tea. You're right. But it does make it easy to just kind of just put yourself out there. Mm-hmm. I was surprised actually. And I think what kind of gave me a boost of confidence was like, I read somebody's book and it wasn't for me. It wasn't, I was like, meh, it's just not my thing. But he's like, to see how easily this person could do it, I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll give it a shot. I'll take a swing, and that kind of gave me that boost. And then like, there's, it's just like, it's so nice to like, have, Amazon is also connected like Goodreads, and Kindle, and then Barnes and Noble, different method, slightly different method, but also not that hard to publish through them as well. But Amazon is a monster as far as like their marketing and sales, and just buying stuff online is so easy through them, and selling something online is easy through them. So yeah, it's been an experience.
Now, I have a question. I've never asked an author this, but I've always wondered this. So
Yeah.
I'm a big Kindle guy, right? And
Hmm.
I had the Kindle Unlimited, where I can read X amount of books in a month for
Yeah.
a certain fee. So how do authors get paid off of that?
I got to learn about this myself, and it was like kind of exciting and interesting. So, authors, when they publish through Kindle, the Kindle Direct Publishing, and you get your book on like Kindle Unlimited,
Hmm.
you get paid per page read through Kindle
Really?
Unlimited. Yeah. So if somebody reads 71 pages, I think it's like a nickel a page or something like that. Um, so you're actually paid. You're given a percentage from the number of pages read, and then if that person who, like, for instance, you know, let's say you read my book on Kindle Unlimited, and you're like, man, this is such a great book. I'm gonna share it with my friend. On Kindle Unlimited, you can share books with other people.
Hmm.
Well, then I get royalties from that, from you sharing it with others and them reading it, and then every time they
Really?
share. Yeah, so it's interesting because when you go and you look at the spreadsheet of like your sales,
Hmm.
it'll actually tell you how many units you've sold, and then there's a different breakdown for number of pages read through Kindle Limited.
Wow.
And yeah,
So
and then it'll tell you
that's
how
another
many.
income source for author.
Yeah, yeah, and I was like kind of really surprised. I was like, oh wow, that's really cool that, and I think it was like they kind of break it down. It's like, you get $100 for every like 1,000 pages read or something like that. Um, the royalties anyway.
Yeah.
So the royalties are interesting. I'm learning more and more about that side of things too. Is like how does royalties work, and the Kindle world.
Yeah.
You know.
Because I interview a lot of authors, and like it would
Mhm.
get pretty expensive if I was buying a lot of books. But every author's book. But I have the Kindle Unlimited, so I can download all of their books and just read them and just pay one monthly price.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, I love Kindle Unlimited. It's great, um, and it's great, especially for indie authors. Because somebody gets to read your. I mean, they're already paying for a service. And if your book is like out there, and you're like, hey, I'm on Kindle Unlimited, check out my book. I mean, really,
They're
it's
more
going to
likely
cost.
to give it a try.
Right? Yeah. Um, So it's been and the only drawback is you don't get to sign the book for
Yeah.
them. Which I mean,
Which which I do like but this is why I do. So like if I really like a book, like I have
mhm,
a whole collection back here. But if I
yeah,
really like a book that I read on Kindle Unlimited, I always get the signed copy
yeah,
just for a collector item.
yeah. I think right now the biggest challenge is for me waiting. First of all, patiently.
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, I have all these units sold. Now I'm just waiting for the reviews, and
Yeah.
that is like, oh,
I can
agonizing. I'm like,
imagine.
oh, come on. Just waiting for those reviews to roll in, because it's easy for people to, like, oh man, I read your book, and I loved how you did this and this and this and this and this. I'm like, great, put that on Amazon for me.
Hmm.
you know. But again, some people aren't comfortable with like that stuff. Like one of my friends told me, she's like, she read another person's review of my book. She read the book, she loved it. She's like, I don't know how to put it. I'm just like, you know what, man? Tell me you love the story. Give me 4 or 5 stars, whatever you think is appropriate, and
Hmm.
that's good enough for me. You know, I, you don't have to wax poetic. You don't have to get fancy with it.
Paragraphs, yeah.
You don't have to put like paragraphs in. Just, you can tell me in person, but it's like kind of taking that extra step, which I encourage everybody watching your channel. If you know an indie author, one of the best things you can really do for them is leave a review, good or bad. I mean, if you didn't like the book, at least it gives, just tell you why,
Hmm.
because it is a learning experience, right? You know,
Yeah.
we're all trying to own a craft, and you know,
But so many indie um, artists say that they don't want people to comment bad reviews on their films or their books. But like at that point, though, do you want people to? So I get a lot of listen. I don't have if you look at my YouTube, I don't on YouTube you get a percentage too, like how many people like your channel. And I'm not at 100. You know, I'm at 97, I think. But there's a lot of people who don't like my channel. A lot of people who don't like me. Trust me, they've commented. They don't like me. But like at the same time, like some of them actually gave me great feedback why they don't like my channel. They say that your microphone is too close to your face, or you know, blah 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 blah. And I actually some of it, listen, it has actually helped me grow as a creator.
Right. So here's the thing. I've always been on some level an artist. You know, whether it be performing or drawing or whatever. You know, you have to. An ego is a huge driver of all the things that we do, right? But sometimes you have to tuck that in, you know, tuck the ego in and open your mind to the, you know, possibility of seeing, you know, that there's learning opportunities here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you said earlier, like focus on the positive. You know, if somebody's going to go on, I mean, you're going to have people who are going to troll you.
Yes, you got 100%.
Right. And being on YouTube and, you know, things like that. I mean, I went on Reddit for the first time in my life and had no idea what I was doing. And it was like pounce, you know, all these trolls come from everywhere. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you know. But that's the thing, though. You're going to have that, and it's expected. The feedback you want to look for is somebody who's like, you know, what you're doing, this wasn't bad. But if you really want to improve yourself, try this, you know? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being told that there's a better way of doing it. Because, and like I've said, you know, several times in this interview, I'm just having fun and I'm learning a lot. And if I, you know, and this whole publication process, I've done it so far backwards. Oh. You know, like people are like, oh, you did that first? I mean, that's normally like, I'm like, I know, I get it now. My next book is totally going to be different, but you have to be humble, you know, and you have to let yourself kind of like take that hit.
Yes.
You know, my best friend in the whole wide world, I gave him my book, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna tell you what I thought of this book, and I'm gonna light you up. You know, like he straight up said, he's like, I'm gonna light you up, because he was like one of my first, like, you know, like, hey, let's just give it a good read and tell me what you think. And yeah, he didn't hold back, which was great.
It is great.
You know, because I needed to hear that. I needed, like, okay, and it stings, you know, but you know, but that's the thing, though. It's like if you come at it with the attitude of like, okay, well, you know, I'm still a student, you know. There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to, like, you know, get that feedback and like learn from it and grow and, you know, craft, you know, improve your craft.
Exactly. And learn from people also who have been doing it, like even like my YouTube, like Presto Underground, by the way, is one of my subscribers. Thank you, dude. Like he's a established YouTuber, and when I first started doing my first videos, I had some established YouTubers bashing me, knowing that, you know, this is brand new to me. I'm like, what? But he was one of the ones, and he still gives me advice, even today. And he gave me advice, hey, do this, do that, do that. And like, it's good to have.
Well, and that's, and you know, when you asked me, it's like, have you looked at my channel? Have you checked my channel out? Just like I asked you if you read my book. You know, like we have to support one another.
Exactly.
You know? No matter where they're at in that journey. I have a friend who has yet to publish a novel, and she is, you know, kind of going through all the steps of like, okay, I'm gonna do this and doing this, and she's doing everything right, absolutely perfect, you know. But she's like, I just haven't published yet. I'm like, Okay, cool. I mean, if you publish when you're ready, but I say pull the trigger, you know.
Mhm.
But then that's me. I'm just, I jump in feet first, and damn the consequences,
Yep.
you know. And I've told other people, I was like, if you have a story, man, don't sit there and like just sit on it. It's just going to fester, you
Yes.
know. And that's what my story did for so long. I wouldn't say festering; it was maturing. I had to be at a place where I felt where I could write this, and you know, and and like I said, good or bad, whatever happens to the story, I like I said, I love it. I'm passionate about it. Um, no matter what, I am so proud of what I've done. You know, what is it? Only 2% of the people who actually go out to write a story actually succeed in publishing something. You know, I mean, and again, I could be making that figure up, but that's something that somebody told me. They said, "Hey, you're part of that 2% of people who went out and published."
Yes.
And to me, that's huge. You know, and I didn't do it for anybody else. I love my wife, I love my kids. I didn't do this for them. This was something that I just wanted to. This was a story that I had to get out. So to all your viewers, everybody out there, if you're sitting on a project and you're wondering if you should or shouldn't do it, man, pull that trigger. Just get out there and do it, because believe it or not, there's somebody out there, and just like the saying goes, there's somebody out there with less talent who's doing it already.
And Zach, for me, I sat on this YouTube thing for 3 years, man. And then
Hmm.
this year, I was like, fuck it. Let's do it.
Yeah. No, I mean, and the other thing is too is that, and this is going to sound like a really douchey thing to say, but my favorite quote from me, so douchey, so douchey. Anyway, I said, I have demons, I have ghosts that live up here, that live in my head, and if anybody's going to live in my head, it's not going to be rent free. I'm going to put this stuff to work. So everybody's got a story, everybody's got demons, everybody's got a past. Don't let that stuff live in you rent free. Put it to work, make money from it, make it work for you, grow, whatever you have to do, heal and grow, and make something of it. Because the thing is that somebody else is going to hear your story, somebody's going to hear your story as a YouTuber,
Hmm.
and be inspired to do their thing.
Yep.
One of the best gifts I've gotten out of this whole experience is that somebody said, I read your book and I've heard about what you're going through, and that inspired me to publish my stuff. And I was like, that's amazing.
That's amazing.
And I hope for the very best for this person to succeed. We're not in competition, right? Because I want that person to win too. And so I think that's the thing. Put those demons to work, make them work for you, share your story, inspire others.
And Zach, I'm telling you right now, you made me feel a lot better about myself, because for this whole entire time, I thought I was doing the Kindle Unlimited, and these authors who, like these indie authors who I was interviewing, wasn't getting any money off of it. I'm glad to know that you guys are getting something now.
Yeah, and again, I'm glad that there's royalties for people out there who, because I wondered about that. I was like, oh, how do I get royalties from
I was
Kindle?
wondering how did that work, because I was like, oh my goodness, I hope I'm not like
robbing.
Robin, like I'm reading their stuff and they're not getting their, I don't know.
And I think I went into it with the idea that it's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I just want my story to be read. I just want somebody to be entertained. I want to get this off my chest, and yeah, I would love to make money doing this. I'd love to do this full time, quit my job, do this full time, write constantly, do nothing but this, and hopefully one day I'll be there. Right now I'm more excited about people being entertained and horrified and I laughed because somebody's like, yeah, I was up until 3 in the morning watching The Office because I made the mistake of reading the first epilogue before bedtime.
Oh.
I was like, that's just not even the first chapter. That's just the epilogue. And they're like, yeah, and I couldn't go to bed, because I was afraid of nightmares. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but I win.
Now, have you noticed a trend if more people are buying through like I know, or more people? Or do you see when you're trend that people are buying more physical copies than the digital copies?
So, most of my copies have been purchased through Amazon physically. I think I would say like the first month it was 50-50.
Okay.
But the avid readers and okay, so here's the thing. Honestly, the people who don't know you, who never met you in their entire life, they're most likely going to buy a Kindle version, right? There are those classic readers who love the physical copy, the smell of the paper, all that. And there's people out there, and they're going to get your physical copy of your book. But a lot of your, like, I read just for to blow off steam or entertainment or whatever.
Yeah.
They may get that Kindle version, and that's fine. It doesn't matter to me which medium it is. I will say that, like, my closest friends, my family, the people in my community here in Olathe, Kansas, they were like, yeah, I want a physical copy of this thing. Something to say about, there's like, when you buy a physical copy of a book from an indie author, it's like you're holding a piece of them in your hand.
Yeah.
In a not creepy way. So they're holding something, some part of you, and that's, there's
if it's your first book too.
Yeah. I mean, to think about it, it's like if you're holding a physical copy of some brand new author, who just started, it's like you really are. You got a piece of them, their soul, their, everything that they put into that book in your hands. And I think that's where there's that, like, for people who like have that argument between, oh, I want a physical copy of a book versus Kindle. I think that's where it doesn't feel mechanical yet. Once the big publishing machine gets to rolling and you have like hundreds of copies in bookstores everywhere, right? But as the indie author, you're like, this is like really close to home. There's something like you can almost feel them off these pages, and there is that, I think, that physical, there is that disconnect that, with the Kindle. Still love it. I read my story on my Kindle, and other indie authors, and I can still definitely feel what they're trying to convey. So there's no, like, I mean, no love lost for Kindle.
Yes.
I mean, I would not read nearly as much if it was
Kindle. Same thing with me.
Right.
I wouldn't have room in my house if it wasn't for Kindle. I'd be filled with books. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I carry my phone everywhere I go. It just makes sense to have a Kindle on my phone. So I'm on lunch or whatever. But, that's just me.
Awesome. Well, Zach, where can everyone find you, my friend?
What's that?
Where can everyone find you on social media?
Oh, yeah, of course. So I'm on Twitter. Yes. Or is it X now?
Yeah, X now. Yep.
Right. So I'm just going to call it Twitter because that's who I am.
Call it Twitter too.
A bit of rebellion there. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, Amazon.com, Kindle, Amazon Kindle. I'm on Barnes and Noble, the Nook. The Nook. How old am I? I'm that old. I'm like, oh, you got to read it on the Nook.
But the Nook doesn't exist anymore, does it?
What?
No, the Nook went out of business because the Kindle. So the Nook was the first e-reader. I'm not. Listen, I'm a nerd. But it was the first e-reader, and it was through Barnes and Noble, and then Amazon came out with the Kindle, and it blew it out of water. I think the Nook went out of business, or it stopped. They discontinued.
I want my money back. Barnes and Noble, I want my money back. No, no. I think it's just like when you do Barnes and Noble publishing, They
Mhm.
kind of like so for the e-reader, like the Barnes and Noble like e-reader version, I guess. They
Okay.
still like program.
did?
I think they call it the Nook. Or
I don't think the Nook is around anymore, but you could be right. But I remember like the Kindle like wiped the floor.
No, totally. Yeah, it's like but yeah. So I'm on all those. You can find me in Goodreads. I have one of the best reviews of my book so far is on Goodreads from Nerdiction.com. Man, she got me. She was like, seamlessly pulling together Celtic folklore with cosmic horror. And I was like, you got me. Oh, man, that got me good. All right. But yeah, you'll find me on Facebook. Like I said, I don't have a webpage yet. Working on that part. That's a whole, I'm still, that's a monster in itself.
It is. It really is.
Yeah. I admire anybody who's like building web pages and, they're like, hey, look how successful. Getting hits.
I have a webpage and it looks sad because I'm like, I'm not paying someone thousands of dollars to like, I'm trying to do it myself, and like, I just don't have time to do all that.
Yeah. It's a lot of, I only have so much emotional capital.
Yeah.
And building a page, unfortunately, is not an expenditure. But yeah, so Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, not Reddit yet. Like I said, they booted me out of there pretty quick. I'm on TikTok. So I've been doing a couple of like promos through TikTok, real simple stuff.
TikTok's fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
I have TikTok and I love TikTok.
Oh yeah. It's in Book Talk. Is it Book Talk? Those folks.
That's fun.
That's
Yeah.
Those people are fantastic.
Yes.
And I will say that one of the big, and I'm gonna shout out to everybody out there who's the Facebook community, who they support one another.
That's how we found each other.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. The Facebook community, how they support, new authors, and just kind of, they I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them.
Yep.
Like you said. So, yeah. Thanks for that.
I agree. Thanks them. Because my channel wouldn't be nowhere as successful if it wasn't for especially the indie horror Facebook groups.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. Heart goes out to all those folks.
100%.
Yeah.
But everyone, please go out and grab your copies of We Come Bearing Curses, and don't feel bad if you get it on your Kindle. Your Kindle Unlimited, because Zach still gets paid.
You know what? I just want you to be scared. You know what? Yes. I want you to have nightmares. I want you to have fun. I want you to be grossed out. All of that. I want all that.
That's
and
awesome.
Then and best of all, and most importantly, leave a review. Support your local authors, your indie authors. Tell them how they're doing. Tell Travis, man, leave good, good critical, don't be nice. You don't have to be nice.
Yeah, you don't have to be nice, but don't be an asshole either. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, leave reviews. That's what I'm saying. It's like we all learn. Right?
Exactly. I love positivity, but constructive criticism every once in a while is good too.
Yeah.
Helps me grow.
Yeah.
It helps you grow. It helps all of us grow.
Yes, exactly. So
we all need to grow.
Right. And that's what this book's actually about. The through line for this whole thing is growing, recovery, and post-traumatic identity.
Powerful stuff.
Right.
Powerful stuff. I already told you, man. It's next up actually on my list. It's already downloaded, and I'm gonna do a video review of it afterwards. So
cannot wait. I cannot wait. Yes.
And by the way, when the next one comes out, please come back on, man. You're more than welcome coming back on anytime.
Yeah. I'm as soon as I get a breath. We
can talk about that in the future, man. We can talk about it.
Man. Heck yeah.
Yes, you're more than welcome. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.